Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something pretty huge. We're trying to crack open the playbook, the one used by some of the world's most powerful, most ambitious people.
Yeah, across history, finance, tech, we've got this whole stack of sources. Think Gilded Age tycoons, think Wall Street legends, think today's tech giants.
And the mission here isn't really about judging them, is it? It's more about finding the common threads.
Exactly. We're looking for the strategies, the mechanisms, the personality cults, the financial tricks, the sheer political muscle they use to get to the top, and sometimes, let's be honest, abuse that power.
Right. And the big theme, the thing tying it all together, seems to be this idea of divergence. How do these few individuals get so far ahead?
How do they gain that edge that lets them shape whole economies, make unbelievable fortunes, and ultimately drive the inequality we see today?
It's fascinating because you see echoes, right? Like
Yeah.
the tactics of a 19th century railroad guy might look weirdly similar to a crypto founder today.
Absolutely. And this isn't just, some academic exercise. Understanding these mechanics helps you understand the forces shaping markets and, well, your own economic world right now.
Okay, so let's dive in. Part one, where it all starts.
Uh-huh.
The founder's playbook.
Yeah, building these kinds of empires, it takes way more than just a good idea. It needs this almost messianic drive, this force of will.
And the first pattern we see again and again, regardless of the century or the industry, is this cult of the founder.
Right. The personality becomes so intense, so demanding, it basically is the company. It defines everything, how it's perceived, how it operates. Hashtag A, charisma, vision, and the myth of the founder.
And our sources are full of these leaders who embody their companies, sometimes, frankly, to a dangerous point, pushing their vision relentlessly. Steve Jobs is kind of the classic example, isn't he? With that obsessive focus on design.
Oh, absolutely. Jobs didn't just set standards. He dictated aesthetics down to the tiniest detail. Remember the story about the first Mac model? The engineers showed him the plaster prototype. They were proud, And Jobs just looked at it and apparently exploded. Said something like, "It's way too boxy. It's got to be more curvaceous."
Curvaceous. For a computer.
I know, it sounds odd. But it wasn't just a whim. It was strategy. He obsessed over things like the chamfer, the bevel, the exact curve of the edge.
Why, though? What did that actually achieve?
Well, it was about making the product feel different. Integrated, friendly, not like those clunky corporate PCs. That total aesthetic control imposed by sheer willpower let Apple position itself as, luxury tech. It justified the premium price.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about the feeling, the brand.
Exactly. And then you get the people who try to copy the look of that but miss the substance. Elizabeth Holmes at Theranos is maybe the prime example.
Right, the black turtleneck, the kale shakes.
Yeah.
Trying to be the next Steve Jobs.
Totally. But it was all surface. Her big vision, the holy grail as she called it, was running dozens of blood tests from one tiny finger prick, microfluidics,
Which sounds amazing, but the tech.
The tech just wasn't there. Our sources dig into this, the pipette tips they used for handling these tiny blood samples, apparently terribly imprecise, just couldn't get consistent readings.
So how do they even pretend it worked?
Well, this is the crazy part. To make up for the unreliable hardware, the machines had to run each test multiple times, like 6 times, and then just take the median value. They were basically trying to use math to fake the precision the machine lacked.
Wow, a huge gap between the sales pitch and the reality.
A massive gap. Which brings us to someone like Ray Kroc at McDonald's. Totally different field, obviously. No high tech there.
Right, his empire was built on process, on rigidity. He had that quote, didn't he? Something like, competitors can steal plans, but can't read my mind.
Yeah, and he proved it. There's this story, a competitor in the South tried to undercut McDonald's, opened a big new store, massive promotion, 5 burgers for 30 cents, then even a 10-cent meal deal, trying to starve Kroc out.
And it didn't work. How did the McDonald's franchise survive that?
Because Kroc's mind wasn't just focused on the burger price, it was the whole system. Speed, efficiency, and the other stuff. The competitor was giving away burgers, sure, but people still went to the McDonald's next door for the quick sodas and, crucially, the fries.
Ah, the high margin items.
Exactly. Kroc understood the whole profit engine, not just the headline gimmick. His operational focus beat their price war. Hashtag B, internal conflict and zero-sum culture.
Okay, so this intense vision, this singular focus, it seems like it often leads to a pretty ruthless culture, doesn't it? Like a zero-sum game.
Oh, absolutely. Both inside the company, rivals get pushed out, and outside competitors have to be destroyed, not just beaten.
It seems almost foundational. You mentioned the Gilded Age earlier, Cornelius Vanderbilt.
Textbook example. His success wasn't about inventing things. It was about using his assets, his ships, his railroads aggressively to crush anyone who got in his way. His language was pretty blunt. He told someone once he was in favor of breaking up the regular line, meaning just completely eliminate the competitor.
Not market share, just annihilation.
Total elimination, yeah. Now, fast forward a century or so, and you see Bill Gates doing something similar, but maybe more refined, using corporate policy and contracts as weapons.
His early Microsoft days, right?
Yeah.
Known for being confrontational.
Extremely. Ed Roberts at MIT, who gave Microsoft their first big break with BASIC, apparently called Gates impossible to deal with, a spoiled kid, always arguing.
But that wasn't just personality, was it? He used it strategically.
Definitely. Look at the Apple rivalry in the mid-'80s. Apple was creating its own programming language, McBasic. Gates apparently went ballistic.
Because it threatened Microsoft's control.
Precisely. So he used his leverage. Microsoft Basic was crucial for the Apple II, which was still a huge seller. Gates basically threatened to pull or not renew that license unless Apple killed McBasic.
Wow.
And it worked. Apple caved. They canceled McBasic and had to sign over key rights to their Mac graphics technology to Microsoft. Just pure weaponized dependency, leveraging one thing to win somewhere else entirely.
That need for absolute control, it's a running theme. And it seems to extend beyond just the business operations, like with Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah, for someone like Oprah, the brand is the business. So control has to be total to protect that narrative. The sources mention it went right down to, like, managing her own father's wedding details to fit her schedule.
Oh, that's intense.
But more significantly, look at when her key producer, Debra DeMayo, decided to leave. DeMayo was apparently crucial, her alter ego behind the scenes. Oprah couldn't afford any leaks or bad press.
So a payout.
A huge one. A $3.8 million confidentiality agreement. That number tells you just how much it costs and how vital it is to maintain that single, perfect public image. Control everything. ###C. The tension between technology and business acumen?
Okay, shifting to the more modern tech giants. That internal conflict often seems to be between the founder's grand vision sometimes, like totally unrealistic growth and the basic need to actually run a business.
Yeah.
Amazon's culture under Bezos comes to mind.
Oh, yeah. Bezos engineered that culture from the ground up, the whole raise the bar idea.
Yeah.
He genuinely believed every single new hire had to be better than the average current employee.
Which led to those crazy interview questions, right? How many gas stations in the U.S.?
Exactly. The point wasn't the answer. It was seeing how you thought under pressure with limited data. And crucially, the sources say he'd instantly reject anyone who talked too much about work-life balance.
So total commitment was the entry price.
Pretty much. That was the culture. Which, contrasts sharply with the early days of Facebook. Remember that? The chaos.
Yeah, where the vision clashed with actually making money.
Right. Eduardo Saverin, the early investor and co-founder, was apparently tearing his hair out. He worried they couldn't be a proper business because Zuckerberg just seemed indifferent to getting advertisers or generating revenue.
Saverin's trying to sell ads, and Zuckerberg's focused elsewhere.
Entirely. Zuckerberg was all about growth, users' reach. Monetization was like a problem for later. You can imagine Saverin's frustration putting his own money in.
And then you have someone like Elon Musk, who seems to define that volatile founder type, where his personal focus dictates everything. That whole batch processing idea.
Yeah, Musk seems to cycle his intense focus. Think about the whole Twitter acquisition saga, just this whirlwind of activity, firings, changes.
And then afterwards.
Then, apparently, a long silence. He started questioning if Twitter was even worth his time, worth his brain cycles, especially with AI becoming so important. The founder's shifting priorities literally become the company's strategy, or even its existential threat.
It's incredible. So this force of will, the charisma, the control, that's how they manage the internal stuff. But then they use it to dominate externally, often by exploiting the system.
Exactly. Which leads us perfectly into part 2, how they gain that edge in the market.
Right. So how do these players manipulate the systems? Whether it's financial markets, legal loopholes, political connections, it's all about getting that dominance. #real A, financial leverage and high-stakes risk.
Well, in the modern world, finance is often the fastest way, especially exploiting speed and information gaps. High-frequency trading, HFT, completely changed the game in the stock market.
Our sources talked about how the market isn't one place anymore. Right, it fragmented.
Exactly. After around 2000, it broke into all these little scattered markets, mostly in New Jersey. So if your buy order hit one exchange and someone else's sell order hit another exchange, just a millisecond later,
The opportunity just vanishes for slower traders.
poof, gone. The market effectively disappears if you're not fast enough. And this created the perfect setup for front-running.
Where the fast guys see your order coming and race ahead of you.
Precisely. They see your buy order hitting exchange A, and they instantly buy the same stock on exchange B fractions of a second faster, then sell it back to you at a slightly higher price when your original order finally arrives. Millisecond arbitrage.
And this all led to things like the flash crash, right? That must have been terrifying.
Utter chaos. The market dropped like 600 points and bounced right back in minutes. It wasn't rational. You had huge, stable companies like Procter & Gamble. Their stock apparently traded for like a penny at one point, and maybe $100,000 at another point, all within minutes.
That's insane. It shows the system was just broken.
Broken, or at least optimized for pure speed, not rational pricing. It became this unstable game where only the absolute fastest could profit from the chaos they helped create.
And sometimes the biggest players were actually the ones creating the problems for themselves, like Goldman Sachs and their latency issue.
Yeah, that's the irony. Goldman, one of the giants, had this high-frequency trading platform that suffered from a 5-millisecond delay just getting data across the street in Manhattan. 5 milliseconds.
Which is an eternity in that world. But why?
It wasn't distance, it was their own internal setup. They had this old-school, centralized hub-and-spoke system. So data had to go into their main building through layers and layers of corporate switching equipment, then back out to the exchanges. Their own complexity made them slow.
Wow. Their internal structure became a market disadvantage.
Exactly. Now, shifting from speed to pure ego, let's talk about aggressive capital. Leveraged buyouts, LBOs, hedge funds, especially in the 80s. The RJR Nabisco deal is the classic story.
Right. The book, Barbarians at the Gate. It wasn't really about the business fundamentals anymore, was it?
Not at all. The sources describe it perfectly. All about egos, just this intense contest between these macho Park Avenue bullies in pinstripes. They completely lost the plot. It became about winning the bid, being the top dog, not about whether the price made any financial sense.
Personal pride trumping fiduciary duty.
Totally. Then you have figures like Stephen Cohn at SEC Capital. His fund had these incredible returns for years, like 30, 40, 50% returns year after year. Competitors just couldn't figure it out.
And he wanted to be seen as more than just a trader, right? A brilliant investor.
Yeah, so he shifted strategy. Instead of just trading blindly on momentum, he started hiring industry experts, doctors, scientists, tech people, trying to get information and edge directly from companies before it hit Wall Street.
Which sounds legally gray.
Extremely gray. That constant aggressive hunt for non-public information is what led to those returns and eventually to major legal trouble. It highlights the pressure to find that informational advantage.
And then the most recent spectacular blow-up, FTX and Alameda, where it all seemed to go wrong at once.
Yeah, just a staggering mix of ambition, complexity, and frankly, incompetence. The core issue was Alameda, the trading firm run by Sam Bankman-Fried. It got this fatal exception from FTX's own rules.
What is the exception?
Alameda was allowed to borrow billions of dollars from the FTX exchange, using FTX's own crypto token, FTT, as collateral.
Wait, so they were borrowing customer money using their own made-up token as security?
Essentially, yes. An IOU backed by another IOU from the same group. And on top of that, the internal record-keeping was apparently a disaster. Executives worried they were missing 10% of transactions and couldn't possibly pass a real audit.
So when the FTT token price collapsed,
the collateral vanished instantly, revealing these massive unbacked loans from the exchange to Alameda. Poof, bankruptcy. The whole thing imploded because they gave an internal entity special treatment, bypassing their own supposed safeguards. #B, political influence and monopoly maintenance.
Okay, so exploiting financial systems is one thing. But these ambitions, they rarely stop there, do they? They need to control the political environment, too. Jack Welch at GE comes up here.
Right, Neutron Jack. Famous for ruthless downsizing, but his legacy goes deeper. He really led this charge against corporate loyalty, the idea that a company owed its workers anything long-term.
And that had real consequences.
Huge consequences, especially for unions and wages. At GE, union membership dropped massively under Welch, from like 27% down to under 10%. And that tracked closely with wage stagnation for blue-collar workers. Their raises basically stalled.
But GE stock price did great under him, right? So Wall Street loved him.
Wall Street loved him, yes. But the cost was pushed elsewhere. GE faced scandal after scandal, defrauding the government, price fixing, and maybe most famously, fighting tooth and nail to avoid cleaning up the Hudson River, which they'd polluted with PCBs for decades.
Yet Welch himself seemed Teflon.
He mastered avoiding personal blame. The company took hits, the environment took hits, workers lost out, but Welch walked away celebrated for shareholder value. He basically outsourced the real costs.
That ability to use the system, political or legal, seems even more direct in some other parts of the world, like the even Godfathers mentioned in the sources.
Yeah, their model is often less about innovation and more about securing state-sanctioned monopolies through political connections. Guaranteed cash flow machine.
Like the examples given.
Right. Ananda Krishnan in Malaysia apparently relied for years on a monopoly franchise for racetrack betting, just steady, protected income. Or Vincent Tan getting control of the sports toto lottery, basically handed to him in a privatization deal with no public bidding. The state just creates or transfers a monopoly.
And in India, the Ambani showed how direct that power can be, even over the press.
Oh yeah, Dhirubhai Ambani's reaction was legendary. A major newspaper printed just one paragraph critical of his company Reliance. What did he do?
Pull all their advertising?
Immediately. All of it. Which was a huge amount of money for that paper. The message was crystal clear. And guess what? The very next issue had a very long and favorable article about Reliance. Direct commercial punishment for dissent.
Wow. Okay, and then there's the ultimate master of wielding power without holding office, Robert Moses in New York.
Moses is fascinating. Personally, apparently quite incorruptible with money, didn't take bribes. But he built this incredible power base by controlling public works, bridges, highways, parks.
How did he manage that without being elected?
He understood his real constituency wasn't the public, it was the powerful political players. He kept them happy by doling out goodies, not cash bribes, but things like lucrative insurance commissions, legal fees, PR contracts, all paid for by the tolls and revenues from his public authorities, like Triborough. Millions a year, distributed according to political rank.
He built his own system, funded by the public.
Exactly. And he was ruthless when challenged. There's that story about reformers demanding a public hearing on one of his park plans.
What do you do?
Just pure audacity. He agreed to the hearing date, setting it 2 weeks out. Then, during those 2 weeks, he quietly mobilized his crews, apparently even invented a new ingenious tree-pulling device, and cut down hundreds of trees in the disputed area.
So by the time the hearing happened,
The damage was done, the park was already ruined, made the whole public process totally pointless, just raw power politics.
okay, so we've seen the individual playbook, the market manipulation, the political control. Now let's zoom out to the really big picture. The societal impact, especially with this massive shift happening right now. Artificial intelligence, #A, geopolitical supremacy in artificial intelligence.
Yeah, the sources are pretty clear on this. The AI race isn't really a global race. It's rapidly becoming a two-horse race, a bipolar world order.
Dominated by China and the U.S.
Overwhelmingly, they have an enormous lead over all other countries, and it's a lead that feeds itself.
Why? What do they have that others don't?
Two key things, really. One, massive venture capital ecosystems willing to pour billions into the R&D and computing power needed. And two, enormous populations and user bases that generate the colossal amounts of data you need to train these AI models. Data is the fuel.
And the big players, the 7 giants the sources mentioned.
Right. It's almost an even split. Google, Facebook, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft on the US side. And Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent in China. These aren't just companies anymore. They're like quasi-nation states in terms of their influence and resources in AI.
And the way each country approaches AI development is really different, isn't it? The political culture matters.
Hugely. The U.S. system is described as more combative. Congress grills CEOs, there's pushback, regulation debates. It can sometimes slow things down or punish missteps.
Whereas China?
China takes more of a techno-utilitarian approach. The government actively rewards and pushes for rapid adoption. You've got mayors scrambling to turn their cities into AI showcases, rolling out driverless trucks, integrating city brains to manage traffic, widespread facial recognition.
So they can deploy faster and generate even more data.
Exactly. That top-down push accelerates everything, creating this potentially compounding data advantage. It's a very different model for innovation and implementation.
So AI isn't just another tech trend. The sources call it a general-purpose technology, a GPT.
Yeah.
That puts it in rare company.
Right, like the steam engine, electricity, the printing press. These are technologies that fundamentally change everything. And the prediction is AI's impact will be on the scale of the Industrial Revolution, but probably larger and definitely faster.
Faster is the key word there. The speed is unprecedented. And the economic forecasts are just staggering.
Yeah, PwC predicts AI could add $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030. $15.7 trillion. That's more than China's entire current GDP.
Oh.
It's almost hard to grasp the scale.
But as we just discussed, those gains aren't likely to be spread evenly, are they?
No, the
No.
forecast is that something like 70% of that massive $15.7 trillion boost will go primarily to just the US and China. Concentration again.
Which brings us right back to the huge social question.
Yeah.
What happens to jobs? What happens to human workers in all this?
Well, Silicon Valley seems to have coalesced around three main possibilities, or maybe responses. They call them the 3 Rs. Each one represents a different level of concern about job displacement.
Okay, what's the first R? The most optimistic one.
That's retrain. The idea here is that AI won't just wipe out jobs wholesale, but it'll slowly shift the skills needed. So if we invest enough in education and retraining programs, people can adapt, learn new skills, and move into new roles that work alongside AI.
So humans adapt, work continues, maybe just looks different.
Kind of. It assumes we can learn fast enough to keep up with the technology.
Okay, what's the second R?
That's reduce. This view accepts that AI will reduce the total amount of human labor needed globally. Fewer work hours required overall to produce everything we need.
So mass unemployment then.
Not necessarily, according to this camp. The solution they propose is to share the remaining work. Maybe we all move to a 3 or 4 day work week. The productivity gains from AI are taken as increased leisure time for everyone, rather than just higher profits and fewer jobs.
An accommodation strategy, basically. Spread the work.
Exactly. Share the benefits differently.
And the third R. This sounds like the most worried perspective.
It is. This is redistribute. The folks in this camp believe retraining won't be enough, and reducing hours won't solve it either. They think AI will displace so many workers, especially in fields like transportation, customer service, maybe even some white-collar analysis.
That large-scale long-term unemployment is basically inevitable.
Right. And if that happens, they argue, the only way to maintain social stability and basic living standards is through fundamental income redistribution. Usually, this means universal basic income, UBI, giving everyone a regular income regardless of employment.
So a fundamental break from work-based income for many people.
Potentially, yes. The redistribute view says the machines will simply outpace our ability to adapt through retraining or reduced hours alone. Hashtag UCC. The inevitability of inequality.
Okay, those R's deal with the fallout of AI.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the sources introduces this really powerful economic theory suggesting that extreme wealth concentration isn't just about greedy CEOs or even specific technologies like AI. It might be built into the system itself.
Yeah, we're talking about the work of the economist Thomas Piketty and his famous formula, RG dollar.
R is greater than G. What do those stand for again?
So L TORS is the average net rate of return on capital think investments, stocks, bonds, real estate after taxes and costs. And $8 is the overall rate of economic growth, which generally dictates how fast wages and salaries grow for most people.
And Piketty's point is that historically, Tuzler's tends to be greater than Yotter.
Consistently over the long run, yes, except during major shocks like world wars or depressions that destroy capital. In normal times, the return on existing wealth tends to grow faster than the economy as a whole, and thus faster than wages.
Can you give an example of how that drives inequality over time?
Sure. Imagine capital returns average 5% per year, but the economy and average wages only grow at 2% per year. Wealth that's invested is compounding faster than income from labor.
So people who inherit wealth or live off investments see their wealth grow much faster than people who rely on salaries.
Exactly. Over generations, that gap widens automatically. It's not necessarily about market failure or individual greed. It's a structural dynamic. Capital begets more capital faster than labor earns more income. This naturally pushes society towards, as Piketty calls it, a society of rentiers, where inherited wealth becomes dominant again.
Which basically throws cold water on the idea that just having free markets and competition will automatically lead to a meritocracy where inheritance doesn't matter much.
Right. The source calls that idea that competition alone will end the power of inheritance a dangerous illusion. The historical data, especially from Europe, shows capital-to-income ratios tend to creep up unless there's a massive shock. When things are stable, sure, GER tends to reassert itself.
So if this structural force is real, maybe even inevitable, what could possibly counteract it? Are there proposed solutions?
Well, the most ambitious solution discussed in the sources is what's called a utopian ideal, a progressive global tax on capital.
Global. That sounds incredibly difficult politically.
Oh, completely utopian for now, politically
Right.
speaking. But the idea behind it isn't just about raising money. The primary goal is actually transparency. To have a global capital tax, countries would need to cooperate, share information, track wealth across borders. It would force transparency onto global finance. And that transparency, that democratic scrutiny over where wealth is and how it moves, is seen as the prerequisite for any real regulation of the system.
So shining a light on it is the first step to potentially managing it.
That's the theory, subjecting massive, often hidden private wealth to democratic oversight. Without something that ambitious, the prediction is basically just more divergence, more inequality driven by that Roji dynamic.
And the potential social consequences of that are pretty grim.
Yeah, the worry is if inequality gets too extreme, you might see societies retreating into nationalism, populism, identity politics,
Yeah.
potentially much worse outcomes than just the economic divergence itself.
Yeah. Okay, what a journey. We went from inside the heads of these driven founders' jobs, Crockham homes, right through the messy details of market manipulation and political games, all the way up to these huge systemic forces like AI and Reggie dollars.
And the thread connecting it all, really, is that relentless search for an edge, whether it's speed in the market, a political favor, or just the sheer force of a founder's vision. It all seems to funnel towards concentrating power.
So the big takeaway for you listening,
Hmm.
maybe it's the rules of the game, or sometimes the lack of rules, the systems themselves. They're often more powerful than any single product or innovation.
Yeah, understanding how power works, whether it's exploiting a 5-millisecond delay or getting a state monopoly that gives you a much clearer picture of the economic currents shaping your world.
Absolutely. We've seen these massive fortunes aren't just built on good ideas. It's this unique mix of grit, data, connections, and often sheer political will. Which leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it?
I think so. If that force of wealth concentration, if Laura Giallers is a kind of structural inevitability, as Piketty suggests, where does the responsibility really lie for the divergence we see?
Is it just down to the ambition of the tycoons grabbing every advantage they can find? Or is it more about the political systems that seem unable or maybe unwilling to implement the kind of scrutiny, the kind of measures like that utopian global capital tax needed to counterbalance it?
That's the big question, isn't it? Something for you to think about.